Simon Kennedy Ellis.
I've just, this conversation is interrupting my watching, is it The Ring of Power?
I take it you're referring to the new Lord of the Rings program.
Yes, maybe it must be the Rings of Lord of the Rings of Power. That sounds like that's a mouthful, isn't it?
I won't lie, I have not paid any attention because I find Lord of the Rings a little difficult.
Which aspect of it do you find a little difficult?
So when I was a kid, I read The Hobbit, and then I read Lord of the Rings.
And you enjoyed them?
So yeah, I was a voracious reader when I was younger.
Yeah.
I read far and wide and enjoyed pretty much everything that I read. I remember reading Lace by Shirley Conrad and loving that, and then
Were there particular pages you lingered over?
No, I liked the which one of you bitches is my mother? I liked that whole kind of that thing. And then I remember finishing Lace and then moving on to Camus' The Outsider.
Well, that talk about record scratches.
I know. It was just what is in the house. I just read anything. So I read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and that was fine. But then I watched the films.
Yeah, Peter Jackson, hey? He knows how to finish a film. But Peter Jackson doesn't have anything to do with this series, or did he just ruin it?
I think what it is that he just brought to the surface there's a sort of self-seriousness.
Oh, it's portentous.
Yeah, and I can't really get my head around it. And that is not to say I can't understand why people would find joy in it. And so I support your choice to watch The Rings of Power.
This is a podcast in which two friends talk about the pleasures, absurdities, and imperfections of being human. I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller. Welcome to Midlifing.
And the other thing that's been happening, of course, as you may well know, is I've just about finished writing this application to become to get a promotion. And one of the things, the very first thing, I didn't understand what they were asking me, and I had to ask my boss, and she said, that's when you decide what title you want to be given. And I've been umming and ahhing about, in the very unlikely circumstances that I'm awarded this promotion. Again, seriously unlikely. And one of the things she said, what about professor in choreographic practices? Now, this is funny, dear listeners, because Lee and I, when we're not podcasting, we are ruthlessly efficient in editing and in co-editing a journal called Choreographic Practices. Yeah, so when I say we are ruthlessly efficient, I'll just say that one of us is ruthlessly efficient, and I'll let you, listener, decide who it is out of the two of us. So yes, I like the idea of being a professor in choreographic practices, except for the fact that so I wondered if you could help me decide what it is that I should be when I don't pass this particular application.
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask because you know that I will choose a ridiculous title. So I used to teach on a joint honours program. In fact, my first job was in a department that ran joint honours. And
so what is a joint honours program?
So
that's not a familiar term to non-UK people.
Okay, so a joint honours would be, I guess, something a little bit like, for our North American listeners, a liberal arts degree.
Oh.
A little like. There are certain pathways that you can put together. And joint honours, as it sounds, they're a kind of 50-50 split.
Right.
So that you don't usually get.
It's not as open as a liberal arts degree.
No, it's not as open, but it's close.
Where you have a major, but yes, that's right.
Yeah, but I think the thing about a major is that a major is in a liberal arts context. And please forgive me if I'm getting this wrong. I think that's the the bit that you do the most of, but you do more than one other thing. You'll do
That's right. You
lots
can
of
have
other things.
exactly. You can have
Yeah.
you can have more than one minor,
Yeah.
and then there's other
Yeah.
courses as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas a joint honours degree, it's 50-50 usually, or some. I think in some instances it used to be historically you could maybe do like 40-30.
Ruthlessly efficient with
I've
mathematics.
done 2 glasses of wine tonight, and I've been doing past participles of Portuguese.
Oh wow!
My
wow,
brain
no
is,
wonder.
and my
No
brain's
wonder.
doing a little bit of a hiccupy fart. I think I was trying to say 70-30. Anyway,
Right.
anyway.
But they've kind of stopped now, haven't they? I think
They have.
because
They've fallen out of favour, which is why I said in my first job I taught
Yeah.
on, and I taught I taught a young woman who was doing fine art and dance, a joint honours in fine art and dance, but she refused to say that she did a joint honours in fine art and dance. She would only tell people that she did a degree in jumping and colouring in, which I thought was beautiful. What's your degree in? Jumping and colouring in. So I think you should be
Professor
a professor of jumping. Or professor of impressive neck flick. Or
Professor of one move left.
I never said that.
Yeah, yes,
Professor
in.
one move.
Professor. Professor one remaining move. Let's be clear. I used to have more than one. They're just shrinking.
Professor, I built my career on that. I think. I don't know. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to try and not sound like I'm being shitty now, and I'm going to just ask you a serious question. Is there something wrong with Professor of Dance?
No, That's where I'm heading. Actually, yeah. I've spent quite a lot of time on this application. Not a lot of time on the potential titles. I was sort of avoiding it because I was wanting to avoid a situation where I have to explain what it is. And Professor in Dance makes me think that people go, "Oh, really?" Or if I could say Professor in, see, there's nothing I've got that doesn't require a whole heap of explaining.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So I think
do.
maybe dance is the Professor in choreography, but that's just as bad, isn't it?
I think Professor of Choreography is a little clearer in the sense that people know what a choreographer is, but I guess Professor of Dance could be quite big, and they might want to say things like, "Oh, do you do ballet?"
Yes, or did you work for Beyonce? Anyway, let's not spend any more time on that because it's silly. And then the other thing, just one other little bit of, this is a bit of housekeeping, that
Okay.
as I was biking into work the other day, I bike into work every day. It takes me one song to bike into work.
It's not worth getting your bike out.
I biked past Gloria and Lils, and they waved at me. And I felt like that. I felt like that I'm going to walk in there and I'm going to be like that guy from Cheers. Do you remember? And then you'd walk in and everyone would go, "Hey," whatever it was. Norm, that's exactly. And so I have a feeling that's. And actually, I went to one of the owner. I went in there and there was an owner there. She goes, "It's Simon, isn't it?"
Oh my gosh.
Yep, they waved at me, Lee.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say to you other than it's a slippery slope. Or is it?
I'm actually quite close to the bottom of that slope.
So, Jeff got a little bit of blowback today from one of his favourite shops.
Blowback.
Yeah, he got in a little bit of trouble. A little bit of a critique was offered about his behaviour.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which shop was it?
So
Was it the fudge shop?
No, no, it's not the fudge shop. It's a shop.
Dear listeners, Lee and I are just remembering a particular day and we're not going to say any more. Except if you have any sense of how immature we possibly could be around a fudge shop.
There is... Simon and I did not cover ourselves in
Glory.
in glory, standing in front of our respective wives, laughing, probably for... I mean,
Hours.
it was... Well, I think we probably laughed for about half an hour in the street without moving, and then we continued to laugh for an entire weekend. Based upon
I still don't know what was funny about it.
the single most asinine thing that you could possibly imagine if you were walking past a
I'm
fudge
sure
shop.
90% of our listeners are already there.
Oh, well, if they aren't, they're not
You're
you
listening
else.
to the wrong show. Sorry.
Anyway, yeah,
It wasn't
so it
the
wasn't
fudge
that.
shop.
It was it was a produce shop that sells a produce. You know, apples and oranges and potatoes and the like. It will remain nameless.
Right.
As you know, Bob has been away, but Bob has come back. Welcome back, Bob.
Oh,
Yeah, she's back home. She's been
hey,
home
welcome home, Bob.
Yeah, she's been home a day and a half. It's been a total delight. I discovered something about myself that I didn't know. I only sing when Bobba's in the house.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I didn't know that because I was stood in the shower and I thought to myself as a morning, a morning that Bob was here, and I was singing very, very loudly, and I realised, I haven't done this since she's been away.
Oh, that is interesting because we don't. I know that Lil and I don't talk to all our inanimate objects except when we're both in the house. The house falls silent when one of us is away. They all stop talking to us.
Isn't that funny?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a similar thing. Yours is a little less crazy.
I don't know. I really don't know. I was caught by a stranger in the churchyard a couple of days ago asking Jeffrey what day it was. And then I went, well, yeah, obviously, I know it's Wednesday. What's the date, though?
That was what your conversation was?
That was like I was walking along saying, so, Jeff, what day is it today? Well, yes, I know it's Wednesday. But what's the date? And somebody went, are you asking your dog what date it is? I was like, well, evidently.
Did the person actually say that?
Yeah,
I make a small town, isn't it?
Yeah. They were quite perplexed. They were a tourist, you know. They probably thought I'd been
like a
to
performance.
entertain. Yeah, like a small performance in the churchyard. Anywho,
Yes, so you can. Yes, and
Bob's
so,
home.
That's great.
Bob
and
is
have you
home.
got something to talk about? Or,
Well, I have to finish this. I have to finish this boring dog anecdote.
Oh right. Oh yeah. Sorry.
Which
yeah,
I went
forgot
off.
about that.
Sorry, Bob's home. She went into the produce shop to pick some stuff up for lunch and also to say hello to Karen and Charlotte, who manage the shop.
The unnamed
shop.
produce shop.
And Karen said, I've only seen one of the men you live with for a little while. And Bob said, which one? And Karen said, the one who can go out by himself. She went, yes, right. How is the other man? He's fine. He had 3 apples today, so I assume you must have seen him. So you know that Jeffrey, or do you know?
Has he been stealing apples?
Well, it started as theft and then became gifting. So Jeffrey gets given apples from this shop very, very regularly whenever he goes past. But Karen said, Jeffrey has not been here today. Where has he been going to get his apples? I want him to come here today and explain himself.
He's been cheating. He's been double dipping.
He hadn't been cheating. He hadn't been double dipping. He had been scrumping. He took me on a walk past an apple tree and said, Lee, I found an apple tree. It has multiple apples on the floor. Let me show you how good they are. And he had 3 apples and I had an apple as we were on our walk this morning.
And so they don't. Do they still feel betrayed or cheated on?
No, now they knew that it was windfalls. It was fine. And then he had another 3 apples.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, he gets a lot of apples.
Wow.
I can't believe he doesn't have more like
Yeah.
explosive diarrhea.
Yeah.
He
You
doesn't.
you didn't have to say it, Lee.
I
You just
know.
didn't have to say it.
I know, but just in case anybody was uncertain what 6 apples in a day might do to a dog's digestion, it doesn't do
You
it to
should take
Jess.
him outside the fudge.
I'm not even going to laugh at that. So, Simon, do you
want
have
to,
anything
don't
to
you?
talk about? Nope, moving on.
I do actually.
Oh, hit me with your best shot, Durdum.
Okay. So, I was having a conversation with a friend talking about making mistakes. I guess I just want to, what do you like? How do you treat yourself when you make a mistake?
My kindness towards myself is in inverse proportion to the size of the mistake.
So the smaller the mistake, the more kind you are to yourself?
Quite the opposite. The smaller the mistake, the more I will berate myself. The larger the mistake, the more I will say, it's okay, these things happen.
And why do you think that is? Because I was reminded of, one of the things that's most remarkable, I think, about learning another language is that you are, by necessity, you're confronted by, and in fact must make mistakes, and you continue to make mistakes a lot.
Yeah.
Like it's not, they're unavoidable. If you imagine that you would not speak unless you were perfect, you would never utter a word. Mm-hmm. But I do remember a kind of impatience that knocked on the door of shame, meaning in a lesson with a teacher and then getting into a kind of a world of I can't do this, like really quite deep-seated I can't do this because I had made a particular mistake or that it was confronting and not being able to dig myself out of that. So really quite as if that scenario equated to I'm no good, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
And maybe that's slightly different from being, that sense of making a mistake and then letting it, like John McEnroe used to happen, where there's sort of sense that he would explode. I'm sure you remember John McEnroe, and that would contaminate his performance. Not always, but there would be times when it would contaminate his performance in the sense that it would be to his detriment. It would reduce the quality of his performance. And I was wondering about the sort of second part of my thought was, when is it that, and do you have any memories of when you started to learn how you respond to mistakes, big or small?
I don't think that my learning has been linear, and I don't think that my responses are the same in all contexts.
Yes.
Like everything that I say, it's immediately followed up by a contradiction of like, well, yeah, of course, I always feel like an imposter because, my mum and dad left school at 14. My dad was a butcher. My mum worked in a factory. I'm not supposed to be, have a PhD and work in a university in a senior role. These are not things that were designed for me. But that's an existential thing, that notion of imposter. And like all of us, I'm complicated enough for that to run as a subroutine underneath the daily interface of engaging with my work and thinking, yeah, I'm doing a good job of this.
It's a subroutine that doesn't really. I know I'm mixing metaphors here, but it doesn't really infect you.
I don't.
Oh, we could say it's a computer virus. So yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it infects me in the sense that I acknowledge that is, and now I'm just going to keep running with the metaphor. I acknowledge that it's base code. There's nothing I can do about it. It's part of the way that I've been built, and I know that is that notion of feeling like an imposter is not really to do with the job, as in the tasks that the job require me to do, and it's the fact that I am occupying this kind of a position at all.
Right.
So those are two separate.
But it doesn't get in the way of you doing your work. Clearly for some people it's debilitating.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. I mean, there've been moments where it has done, I guess, where I felt a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure, but that's quite a long time ago now, because I feel that I'm capable of doing my job well. Um, my failures, of which there are many, are instructive.
Mm.
It's interesting that you used John McEnroe as an example, somebody physically very capable. I think where I felt shame the most explicitly in relationship to failure was when I was in my deep in my yoga practice,
Mm.
which of course is entirely the wrong thing to be feeling when you're doing yoga. It means you're doing it all wrong, but you kind of have to go through that.
Well, not all wrong, right?
Well, I was wrong in the sense that I was concentrating on shape.
Sure,
You know,
not sensation.
Yeah, I was concentrating on.
The
I
exterior
was
form. Or, yeah.
exactly. I wasn't on my mat. I was somewhere else. How is it for you?
I think I get. I think the interesting things or interesting moments are when there's some sense of a reaction being disproportionate to the situation. I think that interests me, and it interests me because it's like I have the sensation that I'm telling myself something, that there's something going on here, which is far more than the situation. And so, I mean, I can give you a benign and banal example, but also I have pretty strong memories of playing tennis as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, and the profound and the profundity of my deep frustration with mistakes. And this is interesting. It's interesting in the sense that if you don't know this, or most people won't know this, but tennis is more than many sports about making fewer mistakes than the person you're playing. And they call them unforced errors, which I always loved, versus a forced error. So it's a game predicated on the visibility and obviousness of error. And yet, even though I knew that, it didn't seem to make any difference to how it is that I experienced those. Now, I used to get very angry, explicitly angry, and I stopped that. I remember I've had a couple of pretty strong memories as a 13 or maybe 12-year-old, and just losing it and realizing that this wasn't such a good way to go. But what I did was I ended up just bottling that. It wasn't that I didn't experience things differently, I just didn't express them.
Right.
if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I think I learned, and where did I learn that? Oh my, I have no idea. But there was a sort of sense that there was a sort of a sense of that it felt very deep in my psychology as a human being, that's how I responded to those situations, which was not necessarily how other people responded to the same situation. Not necessarily worse, not necessarily better, but and then a situation now would be bizarre if I'm cooking. And as you know, when you're cooking, you make mistakes all the time. It's just one of those things. But my sense of disappointment in myself is bizarre, Lee Miller.
Right. Really?
Just bizarre. Yeah. It's disappointment, frustration, like I'm no good at that. Really quite strong negative self-talk would have been the language I would have used as a tennis player. You wanting to reduce negative self-talk. But yeah, like filled with that. So yeah, and I think it's quite, interesting, I guess psychologically interesting, in a benign scenario that, because really, what does it matter? I mean, I don't like wasting food and having to throw food out if I make that kind of mistake, but by and large, it's okay, right?
Yeah, and also the mistakes you make when you're cooking are rarely food going in the bin. levels of mistakes. Usually they're
Yeah, exactly.
it's kind of like, oh, this isn't as good as I want it to be. This doesn't particularly taste as transcendent as I was hoping for, but it's going to serve a purpose. It's not going to make me sick. You know,
No.
there is a sense
That's right.
of, yeah. I mean,
That's right. In fact, I imagine the better and more experienced you are, the better you are at going. Okay, well, I can do this. I can do
Yeah.
this. You know,
Yeah.
you see it, and you see it on a very, in a sort of a heightened level on a show like the Great British Bake Off. You know,
Yeah.
how is it that they deal with mistakes?
my advice is get a Dalmatian.
Just feed it, especially if it's apple related. What is that? Move fast and break things.
That's me.
Yeah, and Facebook.
Maybe I just break things. Break things. That seems like less of a good call to arms. Break things.
I like move slow and make things personally.
Oh, that's lovely.
Should we stop?
I think we should. This feels like it has not been the best episode.
Really?
Yeah. I'm a bit anxious that got a bit self-important and dull.
Really?
I'm blaming myself, just to be very clear.
Oh, I think you'll be able to. It's amazing what you can cut out.